Hi, welcome to SportX, where we talk all things relating to the ever evolving sports business arena. I'm Gerard Davids, founder of TalkX TV, where we host SportX as a content channel. Today, I'm joined by Calvin Umu Ojine, a specialist in sports governance, sports law, and regulatory compliance and social impact. Today, we'll talk to Calvin about a recent article he posted on LinkedIn unpacking the need for FIFA to ensure that football federations set up proper national dispute resolution chambers. In your view, Calvin, how effective is FIFA in its efforts to ensure that all member associations establish functional NDRCs? And also, what specific challenges do you see hindering progress, and what recommendations would you make to FIFA to overcome them?
Thank you, Mr. David. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. On this issue, I'd like to start off by saying that FIFA has done creditably in terms of their governance reforms and efforts, and specifically concerning the issue of national dispute resolution chambers. How they have laid out a regulatory framework for national federations to follow in setting up their NDRCs is quite commendable. Nonetheless, going to the directly to the question you asked about how effective FIFA has been, I think the underlying words there in ensuring that member associations, actually establish their NDRCs. I think this is where FIFA needs to do some more work or ensure that more work is done because in practical terms, there's quite a number of national associations, national federations, if you like, that have not established their NDRCs. And we do have a number of cases where even though there is some body that purports to adjudicate over disputes between, say, players and clubs at the national level, they do not necessarily meet the minimum requirements for a standard NDRC. Like I highlighted in the article, Nigeria is an example of a country, a national federation where there basically is, or for a long time, there has been no NDRC. And of course, this means that lots of disputes go unattended. Another example is Congo, where although where, although you had a situation where a player actually filed complaints before the federation, it was not attended to, and it's not Africa alone. It's not Africa. Like FIFPro has highlighted that there are a number of countries, too many in fact, where NDRCs are not established. Azerbaijan is an example highlighted there, as well as Turkey, which is a popular football destination for many African players. So we see that in as much as FIFA has done well in establishing the regulatory framework to guide national associations in setting this up, there's not been much work by some associations in actually setting these standard NDRCs, setting them up. So a lot of work needs
Thank
to
you.
be done in that regard. Then you also asked about the challenges. In term, there might be constraints, external constraints such as the finances. In some cases, maybe a bit of debt of technical know-how, which I don't reckon with so much. But in terms of challenges now within at the organizational level, I think it's just apart from political will to do these things, I do not see anything close to a significant challenge as that has turned out to be. And I say this from experience, having worked in football at league and national level for up to 7 years in the recent past. I can say it's a question of political will. The federations are just not alive to that responsibility. They do not appreciate seemingly the significance of it and the impact it has on the domestic players, such as the domestic stakeholders, such as the players. And also recommendations. In terms of recommendations, I think it's governance measures, really. I can think of a few governance or regulatory measures that can be put in place. Like they typically say, the carrot stick approach. Make them understand why they need to do it. Incentives, typically say financial incentives. That if this is established, you meet these requirements, you get these financial, benefits. And in the alternative, where they do not fulfill these objectives, set up their NDRCs or what have you, they miss out on financial benefits. We've seen things like that from FIFA, such as the FIFA Forward program. But I think from the FIFA Forward program where national federations actually get financial incentives to meet development goals, indices for youths and youth players, grassroots, the female game, and what have you. But we've seen that a lot of federations have actually left money on the table. They've not met these indices, and they are happy to not get the benefits that would have flowed. So, more than just outlining financial incentives, I think there should a bit more can be done. For instance, the grants that go to federations where they do not meet requirements such as setting up NDRCs, a chunk of it can be withheld, and not just withheld, but maybe channeled to some measures, to some efforts to ensure that that vacuum is filled. For instance, I do not see why we cannot have dispute resolution chambers at, say, the zonal level. In West Africa, we have the West African Football Union, WAFU. Southern Africa has COSAFA. I think beyond just organizing tournaments, which we do see from time to time, these zonal associations can help plug these gaps.
Yeah, thanks for that insight. And so your article argues that there's kind of like a bilateral corresponding obligation to establish NDRCs, but the reluctance to date could be, as you put in your article, primarily be down to either legal or political resistance from some member associations around the world, so to say.
Yes, in terms of the bilateral obligation, indeed, FIFA at the international level has acknowledged its responsibility to set up a system for adjudicating disputes involving its stakeholders. But looking into the revised NDRC framework, what I found was there was no corresponding or acknowledgement at the national association level. So whereas FIFA, in setting out its guiding principles for the NDRCs, acknowledge that it has its statutory responsibility to provide a means of dispute resolution, it's used words such as where national associations wish to, or FIFA will encourage them to set up their NDRCs. I think it goes beyond that. Just as FIFA has an obligation statutorily in the articles, specifically 53, 58.3, FIFA statutes, it's also outlined there that national member associations of FIFA have a responsibility to set up a form of arbitration so that disputes can be handled efficiently in house. So to that extent, just as FIFA has its obligation, I'm convinced that the national federations also have their obligations to set this up.
Yeah, thanks. So also, as a concluding remark, in your article, you say perhaps FIFA should look at alternative strategies, to pursue the encouragement of member associations to ensure fair and efficient dispute resolution. Could you give an example or two of what those alternative strategies could be in terms of where FIFA should be coming from?
Yes, like I did mention earlier, the zonal approach, the zonal association approach. I think that is something that is viable. You know, If, for instance, in the West African Football Union jurisdiction, a body is set up to handle disputes within the zone, just like FIFA handles disputes that have an international dimension. I acknowledge that yes, funding, finances is an issue, and that's part of what the financial aspect I was talking about. I mean, part of the grants that go to federations normally, because these are issues, these are things that those grants are meant to address. If they're not addressing it, take a part of it and channel it to this zonal DRCs or zonal dispute resolution chamber, if you like. You know, use it to
Yeah.
plug that gap. So that is one. And then there's also a domestic approach, which from practical experience I would like to mention. You know, where at the Nigeria, Nigerian league level, while I worked with the Nigeria Professional Football League, one of the things we did, because in our case, the league was the first instance body for disputes for club licensing. So and club licensing, which is widespread in football now, it establishes criteria that clubs must meet in order to get a license to participate in competitions. And one of those requirements is meeting your financial obligations. So if, for instance, a player has a dispute with his club where the club has not paid him his salary or his wages, and it is flagged, what we did in practical terms was ask the club, then a licensed applicant in that case, there's this complaint, and club licensing requires you to show that you have fulfilled your financial obligations. Kindly provide us with evidence so we can go ahead and issue you with a club license. Where they fail, it's highlighted, and they're required to fulfill that obligation before being issued a club license. It worked in a couple of instances where we used it. So apart from that zonal, approach domestically, it's just exploring avenues through your regulations. Those, practically speaking, it depends on political will as well.
Thank you. That was Calvin Omo Ojine, a specialist in sports governance, sports law, and regulatory compliance, as well as social impact consulting services. Thank you for your time and insights, which is very much appreciated, Calvin. And that's where we would leave it for now. And thank you for watching SportX TV on TalkX TV.